Hey guys, gals, and others, it's the Cannabis Crone. Just a quick short. So, I was talking with my daughter the other day, and we were discussing just how things are where they're at, how it doesn't feel like this timeline belongs to us, um, and the Mandela Effect. There's quite a few things that have come to my attention as that I know was around during my childhood. Um, For example, Jiffy peanut butter. There was a Jiffy peanut butter when I was a kid. It wasn't Jif, it wasn't Skippy, it was Jiffy. I know for a fact. I know that Ed McMahon was the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes guy, and he would bring that big old flippin' check to your house. But now, if you look anywhere online, they say that he had nothing to do with it. Richard Simmons wore a headband. Um, And yeah, there's just so much. The Ford, the little curly Q on the Ford sign was not there when I was a kid. And that was actually brought to my attention by somebody else who said that. So I was thinking, you know, if you look, if you have a sci-fi brain like me and you look at the facts, it almost seems like somebody discovered how to use gravitational wave technology to go back in time, fractured the timeline. And that's why things are disappearing or being replaced by other things because our timeline is fractured. Now, bear with me. This is just a totally wild hypothesis, but if that's the case, and my daughter, I wish I would have recorded our conversation because it was really cool. But she said, "Well, if that's the case, if you couldn't possibly travel back in time without fracturing the timeline, which I believe that you could not." Because even by the very act of traveling back in time, you would affect something. You stand in a room suddenly, and the air molecules have to go around you instead of going. So there's just, it's called the butterfly effect. You would not be able to go back in time. Even if you just stood there, you would be changing the timeline or fracturing it. So let's just say that humans got that technology from alien technology because the government's finally admitted, that there's aliens. Duh. I mean, really? Like, we didn't believe that? We didn't think that there was life in the universe besides us? How flippin' egotistical are we? and, and that would be really depressing if we were the only life in the universe because we ain't all that great. Humanity, yeah, not that great. Not a bag of chips. Anyway, so I told her, I said, well, if there's other, what other alien life form that they got this technology that our government stole, I'm sure they stole it. If they got technology from an alien race who was using time travel, it's possibly because they might be interdimensional creatures, which means they can go back and forth fluidly because they're not linear. But our existence is linear. That's why we get old and die. We go from point A to point B. There's no cyclical, there's no returning. It's one way. We have a one-way street life. So if we stole technology from an alien race that's fluid and they can go back and forth, they would not conceivably have a timeline because they go between dimensions. They're interdimensional creatures. They travel back and forth fluidly. So there's no timeline to fracture because they have a cyclical existence, whereas we do have a timeline that we can fracture. And I could totally see some rich asshole thinking, you know what? I only have $1 billion. I want $1 trillion. So I'm going to go back in time and rig the game. Because doesn't it seem like there is little comeuppance when it comes to evil acts done by very, very powerful white men? Very little comeuppance. I mean, every once in a while we get thrown a bone, but for the most part, they get away with it. How do they know? How did they make their fortune? A lot of these guys seems like they made the right decision at the right time, and the odds that they would have done that, are astronomical, and somehow they just amass this big fortune. Yeah, Yeah, maybe somebody's rigging the game by going back. But unfortunately, whatever asshat is doing that has fractured our timeline. And now Ed McMahon has nothing to do with Publishers Clearinghouse.